So, I wasn't planning on making another video on the Internet Bill of Rights issue because I've made my point on every aspect of it already. But Sargon appears to have made a response to my videos of all people regarding the Internet Bill of Rights. Now, he didn't directly address me by name, but you'll see why I think that in a moment here. Naturally, I have to respond. I mean, come on, it's Sargon. The utilitarian who thinks that he's an individualist because a utilitarian system, quote, benefits the individual. And by the way, even his audience appears to be pointing out the very obvious flaws which we've highlighted in his comment section with the idea of the government regulating social media. In fact, it's so bad that the pinned comment under Sargon's video is somebody pointing out one of the various logical problems with asking the state to regulate social media and finishing with an ironic compliment. Regardless, it seems that indeed the liberalist crowd have at least turtlenecked their way outside of their echo chamber and realized that there are legitimate criticisms against the idea of a government regulating social media, and have taken a long step away from where they were only a week ago, dismissing everybody who disagrees with them as corporate bootlickers. So let's get started, shall we?
Looks like Donald Trump's joining the free speech movement. Exclusive at Reuters. Trump says it's dangerous for Twitter and Facebook to ban accounts.
So, the introduction to this video isn't really relevant to the Internet Bill of Rights debate, and is rather just a report of something that Donald Trump stated in regard to social media censorship, which I guess he gets points for being objective, since that's literally just something that Trump said, but this takes up a good 30% of the video. It's completely unrelated to the subject at hand, and he only mentioned it as a segue to his main argument. So from a literary standpoint, this video is very disorganized and poorly written, which normally that's not a problem, but this is supposed to be the case for regulation of social media. This is supposed to be an essay presented in video format. I know this is nitpicking, but the substance of Sargon's arguments don't really give me much to work with here.
There have been a lot of libertarians complaining that I'm advocating for regulating social media. I'm sorry, I think it's become necessary.
Look at that fucking eye roll. And all he's doing is merely stating that there's a group of people that disagree with him. That's something that I've always noticed about Sargon. He seems to have a remarkable sense of contempt for libertarians. I mean, when he's talking about feminists or socialists, he can sit there and talk about their politics with a straight face. With libertarianism, he can't even fucking state the premise of opposing arguments without showing a visible sense of disgust. I find it interesting how differently he responds to people that have regularly just absolutely whomped his ass during political debates, in contrast with the low-hanging fruit that he regularly takes.
I think Silicon Valley has become predatory, active, a fifth estate that is exerting its influence over society, and we have to do something about it.
Sargon, you are mischaracterizing our argument. We don't disagree that something needs to be done. The problem here is that the issue to begin with that's causing this is the government massively subsidizing these social media companies. So much so that in Facebook's case specifically, for example, they would be making absolutely nothing if it wasn't for the government subsidies. In fact, even with the subsidies, Facebook is hemorrhaging money. And yes, all of them are being heavily subsidized. Google, YouTube, Twitter, etc. I mentioned this before in both of my previous videos on the Internet Bill of Rights, and I don't know how, Sargon, you don't understand the ramifications of this unless you're blatantly ignoring them. These companies are being fucking slaughtered on the market. Their user growth and their web traffic have declined significantly since 2015, and they're losing more money than some industries are worth altogether, specifically because of the practices which we all despise. But since they are so heavily subsidized, they have no incentive to change their business practice, because nothing will happen to them if they piss off their customers, since if they want more money, the government will just take some from us and fucking give it to them. If competitors come along which make all their users swarm over to them, or if people protest, why would they change? They have no reason to. Because the government has intervened in the market as is. They have become inefficient and anti-competitive. Our difference, Sargon, is that we recognize this and understand that government regulation cannot solve a problem which was caused by government intervention in the first place.
For example, one thing that Trump, I think, probably could do about it is force these companies to have particularly specific guidelines for when and how they will terminate your account.
So let me get this straight. You're going to have the government impose their standards of what is and isn't allowed onto every website on the internet, knowing that the government is the entity subsidizing these few companies which are causing the problems with their speech codes you're complaining about, and have imposed regulations which allow the very media you despise and are helping these media companies to be guaranteed funding through zoning laws and, yes, direct taxpayer subsidy. And Sargon, as both I and Filthy Heretic have pointed out now, there is a bill going around the Senate right now created in response to outcry on social media from people like you in response to banning Alex Jones. And it was proposed by a progressive Democrat named Mark Warner, and it would allow the government to de facto nationalize the entire internet by having the FTC and FCC classify it as a public utility, and the government would be able to criminalize websites and users on social media for behaving in ways which the FCC deems to be unfair. How do you not see what our problem with this is? Do you not find it at all suspicious that these tech giants which you are supposedly fighting against are advocating for the same thing you are? Isn't it odd how many provable connections these social media companies have with the state, and how the state is seemingly causing this problem, yet the narrative is that the market is at fault? And have you noticed that these social media companies keep making the same moves over and over again, every time backfiring spectacularly, and they end up producing the exact opposite of the result they were supposedly intending to begin with? Doesn't that jog your noggin a little bit, that perhaps there's an underlying agenda here which may be a bit more complex than they're just a bunch of goddamn liberals who want to censor my free speech?
No skin off your nose, no skin off anyone else's nose. I don't really think it's too much of a trouble to make small businesses do the same.
You know that thing which you advocate for regularly? Freedom of association? Yeah, well, forcing people to associate with others isn't really free association. In fact, it's the exact opposite of free association. What's the word I'm looking for when you have no dominion over yourself and you're compelled to associate with someone by force? Damn it, can't remember it. You might be right, Sargon. Maybe I am just overreacting.
But the thing is, we know that these social media companies made their terms of service as vague as they are to give themselves this kind of freedom. And now they're fucking using it. At the expense of Alex Jones, Occupy London, and various other people in between.
Yeah, so let's create alternatives, go to alternatives, and decentralize the internet through the creation of a new decentralized P2P encrypted network protocol to replace HTTP, like the one I and a team of friends are currently working on called FNet. That way, the government can't regulate the internet, no one can spy on anyone else, and social media companies would be incapable of discriminating against others even if they wanted to. All government nationalization will do is establish these companies as the dominant social media platforms forever.
These social media companies need us as well. We are their product. We are what they are selling.
Which is exactly why they don't need regulation. What they need is competition so that they actually suffer consequences for pissing off their consumers. All regulation with state intervention has done so far is make competition less abundant, so clearly we need a freer market and more decentralization. How is it that you come to the realization which you just explained and think that the market should be more centralized? Centralization leads to less competition, and less competition creates less incentive to provide quality service.
I'm sure one day there will be something akin to like a standard messaging service where anyone can be able to program a simple plugin that goes into a browser and then accesses in sort of BitTorrent fashion just information like Facebook posts or whatever on people's computers. I'm certain that one day social media will be totally decentralized. We won't need people like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc.
And this is how I know Sargon is indirectly responding either to Filthy Heretic or myself. First of all, you don't need Google, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter as is. There is currently nothing compelling you to use these sites, but if the internet becomes nationalized, there will be no way of getting rid of them. Secondly, Sargon, if you understand how great a thing decentralization would be for the internet, why are you not supporting efforts to decentralize the internet? Hell, even though I assume we're not really fond of one another, we both have a mutual self-interest in FNet taking off, and a shout-out from you could really help us quite a bit.
But in the meantime, while we still do need them, I think they should be regulated to reduce their overall power over society.
What? You just said that we need decentralization. How does it make any fucking sense to advocate for centralization and assume that from centralization we'll somehow achieve decentralization?
They have already judged that Donald Trump's Twitter feed is a public space. So let's just follow that through to its logical conclusion.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Because it's already been done, and right now we're just standing here with our dicks in our hands going, well, I mean, I know you're already doing this, but you're not doing it for us and we like it that way. No, I'm sorry, this is already being done. Let's actually make it benefit us for once.
No, how about we stay true to free association, decentralize the internet, and make what's currently happening impossible? You know, like you conceded only a moment ago was what needed to happen. Anyway, in conclusion, Sargon's response was incoherent, seemed to avoid the legitimate criticisms his libertarian critics were making against him, and for some reason seems to be deliberately avoiding decentralization even though he admits that that's what will improve the internet. For any of you who are interested in the FNet project, I will place a link in the description to our official Discord server. Thank you all for watching, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.